Good evening. It's 6 o'clock. Today is July 18th. Tonight's regular city council meeting will begin with the roll call, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Mr. Ballman?
Here.
Ms. Frischie?
Here.
Mr. Greeno?
Here.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer? Here. Mr. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Russell?
Here.
Mr. Slough?
Here.
Ms. Warnicki?
Here.
And Mr. Wobser?
Present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I will entertain a motion to accept the previous minutes. Mr. Palmer,
Move to accept previous session's minutes.
second Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the previous meeting's minutes, say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed, nay. They are accepted. Let's see. Mr. Russell, do we have any add-ons, replacements, or removals from tonight's agenda?
Yes, sir. We have a additional letter from Mayor Murn concerning one-time adjustments to water bills, and we'd like that into the reports of municipal officers and municipal departments section. And also a copy of Hancock County Resolution 432-23 for the County Road 212 to 236 annexation, and that's also in reports of municipal officers and municipal departments. And I move that both the letter and the county resolution be added to the agenda.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none. All of those in favor of adding the items to tonight's agenda, say aye. Any opposed, nay. They are added. We have no proclamations. We have no recognition or retirement resolutions. We do have one petition.
It's the status of the County Road 220 annexation for parcel number 02-000-1006-785 and parcel 02-000-1013-263. They are in the 60-day hold right now.
The annexation documents will be on hold in the city clerk's office until September 7th, 2023. We do have two oral communications this evening. First is Dan Kelly from Findlay, Ohio. He'd like to discuss ordinance number 2023-058, the infrastructure investment. You have 4 minutes. Make sure the red light is on the mic. There's a little button there you push, and there you go.
Well, I want to thank the council for their time and the mayor's staff. The concern I have associated with the ordinance is, yes, it is. Can you hear me now? Okay. The concern I have related to the ordinance is the lack of specificity specific to the ordinance. If you look at the notes in the appropriation meeting of June 13, 2023, there's a specific reference to adding language related to Jobs Ohio, and that does not appear in the ordinance. So that goes to a larger issue that I have about what I would consider, to some extent, the degree of secrecy associated with this project and the amount of money that's associated with the project, and the lack of specifics associated with the project, the derivation of the grant money, what happens with the $3 million if the company that we don't know the identity of, or which state is competing with Ohio, whether or not they come here, the inner workings of that. And as I understand it, you probably cannot give me those kinds of specifics, but as a resident of Findlay, I'm concerned with the way the process has unfolded.
Just a second. Does anybody from council have any comments? Hearing none. The mayor, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, so I believe at the beginning you referenced 068. Is that correct?
058.
Okay, so 058, there was an amended version taken at the third reading to include the Jobs Ohio language. And in the Appropriations Committee meeting, you are correct, that was discussed of having that added, because what that does is it ties it back to the grant agreement that Jobs Ohio has that gives it specific ties, so that if they don't execute the contract or move forward with the project as it has been shared with us to make this investment, there will be clawback provisions that would be able to occur. So that was included. I understand you're correct that we didn't include specific language of the grant agreement, but we did add language to tie it to the grant agreement.
Okay, was Jobs Ohio actually in the third reading?
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
Yes, the
Okay,
amended
well,
version did include that
It
language.
did, because the minutes I have don't appear to have that, so, okay.
Yep, if you wouldn't mind, you can send me an email and I
Sure.
can make sure that you get a copy of the as amended.
Okay, and one other question I have is Jobs Ohio, where is that located? It's obviously somewhere in Columbus, correct?
Go ahead.
Yes, so the Jobs Ohio office is in Columbus. However, they also have regional entities that cover, I don't know if they have specific offices or if all of their employees are remote, but we work with Regional Growth Partnership, which is our 15-county region for Northwest Ohio.
Okay, is the grant money going to originate from the department in Columbus?
So Jobs Ohio's funding comes from the liquor sales within the state. So back in, I forget, under the Kasich administration, they established Jobs Ohio. So the funding comes primarily through that, and then is authorized through a controlling board out of Columbus through the Department of Development and Jobs Ohio that then does the tax agreements.
Okay, very good. All
Yep.
right, thank you very much.
Any
Appreciate
other,
it.
just a second, any other questions or comments? Dan, if you have any additional questions or anything, contact the mayor at her office. I'm sure she'd be more than happy to help
Okay,
you.
great, thank you.
Thank
all.
you.
Yep, take care now.
All right, our second is Tom Bowman, who lives on West McPherson. He'd like to talk about the rezoning of West McPherson.
Good evening. Wasn't planning on doing this, but here I am. So this is from the hip. No prepared speech. The neighborhood's kind of stirred up right now over the proposal of the apartment complex at the end of West McPherson next to the power substation. They're not, myself and a number of people I've talked to are not upset about something going there, but something a little what we would consider more reasonable than the 24-unit, 4-story one. If it fit into the neighborhood, both in looks and size, fine. We don't have an issue with that. But 4 stories and 24 units, you're going to double the population of the street right there in one lot. If you count the number of houses from Main up till it makes the curve there at the church, you're doubling the population in that one lot. So it's just too much for that space. Again, no objections to something that fits. You could probably fit about 2 or 3 duplexes on that lot. It would look good. Single story would fit right into the neighborhood, but to have a 4-story, 3 or 4 story building makes you wonder. And then one thing that came up was moving part of an old building from behind the Y on Grand over there, and it's like that does not seem like a good idea to a lot of us. So appreciate your time. Yeah, like I said, it's kind of a shock. I've lived in that house with my parents and myself since 1969, and nobody's done a thing with that lot. I wonder why. You know, whether it's the substation or whatever, but it's been available. Nobody was interested. So anyhow, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Just a second, any questions or comments? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our oral communications, written communications.
An email from Kathy Wingant regarding art idea for Findlay.
Email to be filed.
An email from Lee Wengent regarding Riverfront Park.
Email to be filed.
An email from Willard Cam regarding a water bill.
Questions or comments? Email to be filed. Reports of municipal officers and departments.
Findlay Police Departmental Activities Report for June 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
City Income Tax Monthly Collections Report for June 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Officer Shareholders Disclosure Form from the Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Liquor Control for Tots BBQ LLC, doing business as Tots BBQ, located at 331 South Main Street, Ohio, for a D5 liquor permit. A check of the records show no criminal record for those who applied.
Mr. Slough.
I would move no objection be filed.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor that no objection be filed, say aye. Any opposed, nay. No objection will be filed.
Precipitation and reservoir levels report for the second quarter of 2023 for April through June.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Findlay Fire Department Activities Report for June 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
City Planning Commission minutes of June 15th, 2023, as well as the staff report of July 13th, 2023.
Questions or comments? Hearing none, the minutes and report will be filed.
Letter from City Auditor Stashak regarding revenue estimates for fiscal year 2024. He requests that the letter be read.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion this be read into the minutes.
Second, Mr. Russell. All those in favor that the letter be read into the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Please read the letter.
Ohio clearly defines a budgetary process, which includes the requirement that municipalities prepare an annual tax budget by July 20th. The County Budget Commission has not required the filing of a complete tax budget for many years and requires the City of Findlay only to provide the attached estimated revenues for submission to the Budget Commission for the next fiscal year. In order to meet the statutory requirements for the distribution of the local government money, this document should now be formally accepted by council so it can then be filed with the county auditor by no later than July 20. A motion for acceptance of the revenue estimates will be needed. As required by statute, the council clerk scheduled a public hearing before this meeting, notice of which was published 10 days before the hearing. The document has been available for public inspection in my office since July 7th of this year.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
I think we need an actual motion to approve it.
I'm sorry. Mr. Wobser, I'm sorry, we need a motion to approve.
I'd make a motion to approve, to accept the budget as it's stated.
Thank you. Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Hearing none. Vote or just, does it need a voice vote or just? I'm sorry. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. It is approved.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding the County Road 212-236 annexation, and this is where we attach the add-on to it.
Questions or comments? Mr. Wobser.
Mayor, as I was reading through the timeline on this, it's really quite interesting. Am I reading this right, that on, let's see, looks to be the third page, we had to send a public records request for the right-of-way? What was the situation there?
You are correct. We were not getting a response from the county on the status of the record. They were nearing the time limit where a decision had to be rendered. And unfortunately, we decided to make a records request to get a status update. And before they complied with the records request, they provided us the executed document.
So whose desk was it sitting on?
I can't speak to that, but I believe we received it from the county engineer.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Stashak.
Yes, I appreciate the letter and the information. My question is, it was my understanding that council would have to approve any land acquisition and whether it be annexation, purchase, anything that expands the city borders. And I guess I'm confused as to how we don't need council's approval to move forward on something that would expand our borders, our costs, and our liabilities. I guess some clarification of that or something a little more formal than this would be appreciated for me, for my file, because I'm sure the auditors are going to ask about it in the next calendar year.
Mayor?
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to go through that. My understanding, this is just the right-of-way easements that would be necessary to be brought into the city, so the property owners would still be owning the property, and then the right-of-way would be assigned to the city, but we can make sure that anything you need for documentation, we can certainly work through.
Mr. Station?
To be clear, I'm not asking about the right-of-way easements, I'm asking about the annexation. In other words, the annexed property is annexed property, expands the city borders, expands our square footage of our footprint.
Happy to work with you on this. I know that you and I discussed this letter in advance, so if there's other items that you need, I'm happy to work through that to make sure you have all the appropriate documentation you request.
Any other questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Service Safety Director Martin regarding the annual Community Park Improvement Program grant. It requires council's verbal acceptance, approval.
Questions, comments? Motion, Mr. Russell?
Move to accept or approve the annual Community Park Improvement Grant request.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Further discussion or questions? Mr. Wobser?
I just had a quick question as reading this. The project number 2, extending the stage at the band shell, are they pulling that forward out towards the crowd?
Yes, so if you go out there now, there is a wooden platform that has expanded it, so we would be making it more stable and consistent. We leave that out there all the time. It's starting to rot, so we're going to go ahead and expand the brick and bring that platform out.
Very nice. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed, nay. It is accepted.
Summary financial reports for June 30th, 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
A letter from Service Safety Director Martin regarding Findlay City Schools in-kind trade of services memorandum of understanding.
Questions or comments? Ms. Frischie?
I'd ask that this get read into the minutes, please.
Requires a second, correct?
Oh, I need a second. Would anybody second
I
adding
don't
that
see
in?
anybody doing that.
Okay, well then I guess I'll talk about it.
Okay.
So we got this letter in our council packet regarding Findlay City Schools in-kind trade with the bus garage and also doing labor work for Findlay City Schools from using our street department staff. So my original questions still stand. I appreciate that you like in-kind work. I think that's a conflict of interest with separate entities. The article in the paper today talked about the $11,000 and $12,000, Rob, is that right, for what you're estimating it would cost for labor. And as a member of council, I think we need to better understand how you come up with that numbers, because I spoke with some asphalt companies just to see, like, how do you estimate labor costs, since I'm being told labor. I did call Findlay City Schools and talk to President Harrington's wife. She was supposed to get me the contract for the materials, but basically, I mean, there's a lot of things to consider, and your $11,000 and $12,000 makes absolutely no sense to me. We're going to be using our city trucks to haul this asphalt. Any contractor would be charging a fee of at least $100 an hour to move those trucks with the diesel cost and all of that, plus the labor of it. We have, I forget how many tons of asphalt. I had heard, I think, over 400 tons or something along those lines of asphalt that's going to get laid, plus concrete. I think we need to talk about the fact of, are we prepping the site, or are we just walking in there and laying that asphalt? Because if we're prepping that site, that's a lot of labor. And your numbers make no sense to me. So for part two of that is we then go into the cost of renting, leasing with in-kind work again with Findlay City Schools for the bus garage. That bus garage we had no use for. The equipment that's going in there makes no sense to me. When I talk to the street department, and the equipment that we have that's going over there is equipment that's sat outside since the time it's been purchased. So it's not like it recently went out into the world of rain, snow, sleet, and all of that stuff. It's been like that, and it's been just fine. When I pulled the grant application from Findlay City Schools with the county commissioners, there was an acquisition to purchase of close to $500,000, and then there was labor to tear down that structure, and that was estimated at $20,000. And then we had other costs in there of asbestos assessments as well. And we're talking about, on top of this agreement, we are also going to be assuming all liability for the removal of that structure when Findlay City Schools is ready to have it removed. Yes, we're not moving dollars, but those are citizen taxpayer dollars being used outside of the city for everybody's benefit. I appreciate Findlay City Schools, just like St. Mike's and Liberty Benton and everybody else. And if we start getting into this, where do we draw the line? But I don't feel that you gave anywhere close to a clear understanding of how you came up with your calculation, and I would request that before moving forward.
Ms. Mayor.
So, Councilwoman, I'll try to address each of your questions. And first, I'd like to start off by, at the last council meeting, you stated that you were not clear on why we needed this space. And over the past 2 weeks, I've reached out to you multiple times. So I find it very fascinating that you were able to have an hour-long conversation with one of the department heads, but couldn't have a 10-minute conversation with me so I could provide a little more context on some of these items. So perhaps in the future, you'll be able to reach out so you can have all of the information necessary to make a decision on behalf of the constituents you represent. Second of all, I would like to point out that Findlay City Schools is a public entity which is taxpayer funded. And by finding opportunities for partnerships like this, I think we are saving our community dollars. It would be completely different if we were out there working with a private entity and providing them. We wouldn't do that. We would be having that conversation with you. Additionally, related to the liability of the demolition, that is inaccurate. We would be demolishing it, but they are responsible for removing it from the site, paying all the dump fees, etc. So us tearing down is not an issue because it's very easy to tear down a property that's just cinder blocks sitting there. Third, we do protect our equipment. As you know, we work very hard to make sure that we are taking care of all of the equipment which we have, and being able to put something under shelter, just because we haven't done that in the past doesn't mean it's not a good opportunity. As you know, it helps preserve the life of a piece of equipment if it's protected from the elements. And yes, if we didn't have this as an option, it would be sitting outside, but we were presented this as an opportunity, as well as when we were cleaning out some other properties, which again, we would have had a discussion on had you been able to return my call. And we would be able to have stated that we are able to store items in these properties that are not going to be damaged if there was a flood event. However, we also get warning on events like that and are able to move items. Finally, when related to labor, first of all, I will mention it's a sunk cost. We're paying our employees, whether they're serving other entities and finding partnerships to develop within the community or not. But we also rely on the employees and the department heads to tell us, hey, I expect that it's going to take us this much time to complete this project. And I would like to point out that this is not a huge, big project that we're not building a stadium here. We're connecting paths around to create easier access and to create connectivity to the paths that we have been working to develop in that area to start with. And we are not covering the transportation. We would cover the transportation of the asphalt, but not the concrete, or vice versa. But I understand, and I apologize that we didn't communicate effectively. I certainly understand that sentiment, and I appreciate you bringing up the concerns, but to continue to state that we're trying to hide things from you, or that we're trying to misrepresent things, or that we're taking on inappropriate liability from another entity is simply inappropriate, and I think a disservice to the public when that's really not an accurate representation of this situation.
Mr. Stashek.
I appreciate the comments regarding trying to find opportunities to save community money generally. However, there's a responsibility to the taxpayer for proper accountability. The reason my position exists is so that we have proper accountability, and I have not received the information that I requested, and requested, I think, a couple times by email regarding the MOU, the details. Let's talk about this a minute. Your street department is funded by gas tax dollars. There are certain audit standards and tests that need to be used to make sure that those monies are used for what the proper function is, and that's streets. I appreciate that we want to have good relationships with other entities. However, I want to make sure they are done within the confines of the rules that are in place for the fiscal side of running a municipality, which is a governmental entity under the state of Ohio. So you have the law director that's supposed to give you the legal boundaries. My job is to give us the fiscal boundaries and make sure we test and we're prepared for audit. At this point in time, I have nothing in my possession that I can use to state to this council that that money is being properly accounted for or spent, and it goes beyond that. As far as accountability goes, we should be doing chargebacks on this money, accounting for the time, accounting for the payroll, accounting for the materials, accounting for the fuel. You need to account for every penny that is spent, that is not spent on the city of Findlay's property, so that we know and our citizens know that it's been booked properly, accounted for properly, and that it meets the audit standards of the state of Ohio. And irregardless of where we're at, where we think we're at, and any inferences that we want to pretend exist or don't exist, there is a due diligence that needs to occur, and at this point in time, it has not occurred from my office's perspective. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms. Frischi.
So I don't think you answered my questions. I am not out against anything. There is a process. There was no communication to this council. Were not aware that you entered into a contract with Findlay City Schools. We were not aware that we needed space and needed to be having a discussion about that. So that's two things. When I talked about liability, I was referencing the contract that we were assuming all liability on that. It was written in there. I do not have it with me. I would think that would be better discussed in committee. I'm not saying that you're hiding anything. I'm not sure where that statement keeps coming up. You like to project a couple times in your speech that I'm not speaking to you, and I very clearly told you on these two topics, which was the bus garage and also the park, I was not comfortable having an off-the-record meeting with you on them. I wanted everybody to see everything the same in an email so there would not be any more confusion or miscommunication. So hiding or not, you weren't transparent, and you can take that however you want. Back to the fact that we need to have accounting for things, and I would think we have that accounting when we run our departments for things like chargebacks to make sure we have accountability. And we do need to account for our trucking and our equipment use and all of our people on there. And we do need to know if we are just simply laying the asphalt and the concrete, or we're doing all of that prep work. Because when I try to get a calculation talking to some asphalt folks, they're saying if we're basing it off of 460 tons, which is what I have in my head, I don't know why, you're looking at almost 40,000 in labor. So that's a lot of money. So then we want to go back and reference the law director saying anything below 50,000. How do I know it's below 50,000? And did we need to go into that bus garage space? So two more questions. Have we moved into that bus garage space? And if we did, when? And have we started working at Findlay City Schools on that site yet?
So a couple of items, and Rob, I'll let you touch on the project timeline, or Mr. Aldrich, I know you also. So We will make sure that all appropriate documentation on chargebacks, et cetera, is documented. Our team always works with the auditor's office to make sure that occurs. Regarding liability, I think what you may be referencing is that we take on the responsibility of any of our equipment that is in that. If damage occurs to it, that is our responsibility because it is still our equipment. So, back to the auditor, we'll make sure that you receive a copy. There was a lot of emails going around, so I apologize if you did not receive that. I would just state, clearly for the record, the Director of Public Service may make any contract, purchase supplies or material, or provide labor for any work under the supervision of the Department of Public Service involving not more than $50,000, ORC Chapter 73505. I know you did reference that. I can assure you that the labor associated with this project is below. We will provide you some additional detail if you would like to know the calculations, but I trust my department heads to say that in this instance, it's less than $11,000 associated with this project for the work costs associated with the asphalt concrete work at the complex. The labor costs associated with that, and then the estimated labor cost of the demolition for the garage at about $7,000. So again, we still can provide you additional detail, but I am very comfortable with the fact that it is well below the threshold. And I would also note that the reason I request to have a phone conversation with you is because some of the items were discussed in an executive session, which I'm not going to document because that is not appropriate. That's why none of your other council members are asking these questions, is because they are aware of it, because they paid attention in the executive session. And I don't recall if you weren't there or what. I wanted to have a simple phone call to help make sure that you had a clear picture.
Mr. Stashak.
I must have missed that executive session myself. However, real quick, I think if we get the prevailing wage calculations that should have been done as part of this, that will clear up a lot of it. So hopefully those were done and they were done properly and timely and prior to entering into the agreement.
Mr. Martin.
Just a couple points. Number one, we are in fact storing some things in that bus garage at this point, once we did sign the agreement. And there have been a few parts of the project done at the athletic complex. It is a progressive project, so there are some things, I can't speak to the exact detail of it, but it has been started and work has been done. Regarding the wages, our department heads are very versed in what their hourly wages are, including benefits and what it takes to work out a project when it comes to cost. And when we do this, they work through it, they gave me those numbers, and I trust those numbers are accurate.
Mr. Wobser.
I think when I first read this, when we first heard about this, I was a little taken back at first also, and I was concerned about it. I think though that we can get the auditor's questions answered without too much problem there. I think ultimately this is a good thing for us to do, and I would reference, I have an article here from the Cities and Villages magazine. This is the Ohio Municipal League. In their first quarter magazine. One of their mandates is, under the heading of advancing good government and fiscal responsibility, is cooperation and innovation, and it reads, support and facilitate municipalities cooperating and sharing services with other public agencies and promoting innovation to improve service delivery, customer service, and cost efficiency. So I think this falls right in with what one of the governing bodies of what we do is suggesting is a good thing. And this is a situation, I would say, and I'll go back, Rob, when we do jump into these things, and I say jump, that's not, when we look at these things, I think we should have a little bit more conversation with council prior, just to get a basic idea of the scope, and let's make sure that so we don't end up in here. This was the same kind of situation that happened when we did some work at the library. We paved a lot next to the library. Same conversation that we had, I can't remember how many years ago, different administration, same exact situation. I understand there's some things we can't always talk about but we could talk about in executive session if necessary, and just giving us a little bit more of a heads up, I think would clear up this situation.
Okay, Ms. Frischie.
Don, 73505 of the Ohio Revised Code for the 50,000 or less, does that apply when we are working with outside entities, or is that meant only when we're doing business under our own umbrella?
No, he is able to do that any time it's under $50,000, do a project.
So do we consider the project, the asphalt and everything, since you're looking at under 50,000? Because at that point now you have the labor and the materials.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, the project itself at Findlay City Schools is more than 50,000.
Mr. Martin?
Just to
Yes.
clarify, if I may, we are only responsible for the labor. We've in kind traded for the labor. All the other materials, anything else that's involved in that project has nothing to do with us. That's either being donated or purchased through Findlay City Schools. So we're clear on that.
Okay. Any other questions and comments? Letter to be filed.
Service Safety Director Martin regarding homelessness and unhoused coalition efforts.
Questions or comments? Mr. Russell?
Rob, I appreciate the details in the letter. Won't ask that this be read into the record, but for all those watching, it's a good read and something that I'd suggest you take a look at to show what's being done for this situation. And I mean, if I summarize your statements, it's like all the easy solutions were tried have already been tried, and this is not just a quick problem that can be solved overnight. But I do appreciate the efforts that you and the community have been going through on this, and appreciate you continuing to keep us updated over time.
Mr. Martin?
Thank you for that. Just high level real quick to keep things moving. This has been an effort amongst a lot of stakeholders throughout the community. By no means am I an expert in this, but taking the role that the mayor charged me with, as well as Catherine, the Bossman, the director of the mission, to address this and facilitate bringing the stakeholders in the community together to help work with this. And Councilman Slau's been involved and very active in the committee. So we appreciate that support, and we continue to make progress. It's slow. It's not a one-size-fits-all fix, but we consider to move forward with it.
Mr. Russell?
Concerning the downtown businesses, I did see that there were some outreach efforts with the downtown business building owners and tenants. How would you describe those efforts? Do you feel they're being successful, effective? Do you have a receptive audience that are understanding what your team is trying to do?
Yeah, good question. Forgive me, I left out Chief Matthias because he's been there since day one in part of this committee, because the reality is the quick answer is call 911 and have somebody arrested and whatnot. And individuals have rights, and they are in the public, and we are working through those scenarios. There are some situations where it's trespassing is there, but we again work with the individuals and the business owners. It's a balancing act, to answer your question, where we want people to be able to feel safe and be downtown and enjoy our vibrant community, business owners to be able to have commerce, have people come and conduct business. But people find comfort in being in our downtown if they're homeless or whatnot. And there's reasons they have navigated and migrated to our downtown. We have different groups, as the letter points out, not to get long-winded, but an education and outreach subcommittee from this group that actually is working through with the chamber and talking to business owners on how to communicate with individuals, giving them their tools to have a conversation, initiate that conversation, help maybe make a phone call and get the right people down in front of that business or in front of downtown, and get these individuals a touch point with services or a cup of coffee or whatever the case might be. So, but we have to meet people where they're at. And wherever that is, it might not be the first time or the fifth time, but we are going to continue to facilitate that. And now we actually have phone numbers that are actually able to be, and we're actually disseminating this information to the downtown businesses where they can make that phone call. And it's not necessarily 911. The first call is to get a response team down there for behavioral health or the mission and other resources that can be available for individuals to help facilitate their needs. So again, working through it.
Mayor Mirren.
Just a couple quick comments. You know, I think everybody's frustrated, right? I know every time I see someone, I'm frustrated and obviously like also feel bad for the individual. So, you know, trying to work with the businesses and property owners, I know they've been really frustrated as well, but hopefully having some more resources for them in communication, it kind of comes and goes, trying to work with them so that they feel like they have some options on how to help address this. Very good point. Since it's not being read into the record, we'll put it as a news story tomorrow on the website so that if folks want to kind of read through it, you know, we're open to ideas, but I would tell you, you know, just as kind of the letter conveys, we've looked into a lot of different things. We've tried a lot of different things and have gotten feedback from folks that have kind of worked through this issue before, and it's not going to be an overnight fix, just like it, you know, isn't an overnight problem.
Mr. Hellman.
Yeah, Rob, I don't think you need to apologize for being long-winded. And I'm sure the rest of us here appreciate your letter, what you're trying to accomplish, as well as the mayor and the group that has been working on this. It's not a local problem. It's obviously a state and national problem. Unless you've got your head buried in the sand, you would realize that. I'm delighted that you're working proactively to address it, not only with the people who find themselves in this kind of a position, but also with the property owners downtown and throughout the community. So thank you. Appreciate the input and the efforts you're putting forth.
Mr. Stashak.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you for the information. It was very enlightening, and it's appreciated, and certainly a wonderful, wonderful thing that's going on in this community with addressing it. The Strategic Planning Committee members got a letter, I think it was today, an email, and I was surprised. It actually prompted me to send a response to the person because they have a PhD on their letter, they said, and I asked. And there seems to be confusion a little bit, at least on this individual's part, between the importance and an understanding of homelessness and the unhoused versus affordable housing. And I hope as we go forward, there's an effort to make sure that people recognize a lot of what we're calling an affordable housing issue is a wage issue. It's not just a housing issue. In looking at the data and the facts and the statistics, there's a reality in what it costs to live in a place. And there's a reality in terms of what you need to make to live affordably and comfortably and feed it, whether it be yourself or a family or a group. And I hope this group makes that distinction, because this individual had actually emailed back to me. They didn't see the need to consider wages as part of the issue, and I think it's a very, very important part. So thanks for what you're doing, Rob.
Other questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding water transmitter project.
Questions or comments? Mr. Wobser.
Mayor, thank you for all the information on how the bills were calculated. I guess it's relatively straightforward, but it also took 8 pages to explain it. So it's nothing terribly simple. And I guess I've got a few phone calls from folks, and mostly obviously from the folks that are not getting a credit, that have gotten some larger bills unexpectedly. So what are we looking at for recourse for these folks? Not necessarily payment plans, but looking into, how that, I mean, we know how it was derived, right? It was that the calculations are all pretty straightforward, but what's a person's recourse when they're getting a large bill? The woman I spoke with has a additional bill for $872. That's significant. So that's my question.
Ms. Mayor.
So if I may direct your attention to the add-on item, because I know you guys probably didn't get an opportunity to review that. So first of all, for the public's edification, the letter that was included with the packet that goes into the detail of the calculations, there's two, you're going to see two types of bill. One that has a credit, it's going to say, credit on it. We did look to see if we could break out then the additional usage for the correction in a bill. Unfortunately, we can't have that as a separate line item. So right now what's happening is if you're making up all that additional usage is just in your water line. So again, this will be available to walk through. We'll have a markup bill that kind of explains it. We understand it's confusing because there's a lot of calculations that go on behind to make sure your bill is accurate. So the true up, right, is one thing. One thing that I want to hit on is the folks that are getting a substantially larger bill for some reason outside of just their normal usage. If it's normal usage and we can say, listen, this is normal usage, but your estimate was lower and now you have this one time, really the best option is going to be doing a payment plan and spreading out your normal usage of the past year and a half or however many cycles over a period of time. Unfortunately, that was water you used, you're accountable for it. What we are seeing as a kind of bigger problem is those folks that had a leak, whether it is a leak outside of their home between their meter and their actual house, which is called an in-ground leak, or a leak within where they had a toilet running or a faucet running. And if you look on the back of your bill, we actually talk about that regularly, but folks don't typically pay attention to it. And it's a lot of water that literally just runs down the toilet. So what we are proposing, I ran an analysis. We were able to pull lots and lots of data so that we could have a better understanding. So for the past two cycles, cycle 1 and cycle 2, there were about 11,400 accounts. Those accounts that were billed are the residential users that have been billed over the past 2 months. And so as we look at that data, I want to point out a couple of things. Looking at just straight dollar variance by $10 increments, there was about 11,000 accounts. 4,300 approximately of those saw a decrease in their bill from their prior bill. 978 saw a refund, so that credit. About 1,900 of them were pretty much no change. They were pretty consistent. Then 2,400 had less than a $50 change. And then as we go on are obviously probably the folks that you're hearing more from. The 50 to, there was about 12 accounts that had over a $2,000 change. Now, one thing I would just put into if you do analysis, looking at dollar amounts isn't always enough. You also need to look at percentage change, right? Because if you have a $1,000 bill regularly, a $2,000 bill is still substantial, but doesn't have the same impact if you have a $30 bill going to a $2,000 bill. So I also looked at it on a percentage basis. I didn't include that because it gets really convoluted quickly, but there were about 342 accounts that had a bill that went greater than $90 and also had over a 300% change in their bill. Only 22, which is still significant, 22 accounts had over a 500% change in their bill. So what I am recommending here, because we've really been talking about this internally, and I want to give a huge shout out to the utility billing team who first of all, is dealing with the change of trying to get this project complete, is dealing with some process changes, as well as then fielding a lot of phone calls and not necessarily pleasant conversations on a daily basis, which is very taxing. And so we've gone really back and forth on how do we roll out a fair way to account for those folks who had a leak or something running that they were charged for. But previously, if our system had been up and running and the transmitters were working, we would have caught it typically in a couple of days, and they maybe would have had a $50 additional charge. So what we are recommending is looking at the accounts that had over a 500% change. And those accounts, we would then work with them to determine if the leak was an in-ground leak, so it wasn't actually running, it was leaking out between the meter and their home. If so, our standard process is that if they can show proof that they have made the repair, we write up to 50% of that lost water off. Typically, again, we're catching those quicker, so it is less significant than what we're probably going to see this go around. We would recommend that we use a very similar process for the individuals that had a significant variance in their bill, and that we can then look through it and work with them to say, okay, this was a leak or a faucet running, toilet running, something like that. And then we would work with them to write up to 57 or 75% of the bill on the lost revenue. So again, they're responsible for the water that they have actually used, their kind of standard usage, but then we would work with them to adjust that lost water. We've really gone back and forth, which is why we ultimately decided to do it based off of percentage, because if we did it just based off of a dollar amount, again, something that impacts somebody on a fixed income or a single mom compared to a larger business, we want to try to make that fair. So that's kind of what I would like some general support from for us to move forward with that kind of process.
Mr. Stashak.
I guess my question is for Mr. Greeno. Will you be taking this to water and sewer so that we get full details and I can ask my questions?
Will you put your mic on and respond to that?
Yes,
please?
I think this is something that we need to discuss in the Water and Sewer Committee.
Thank you. Mr. Wobser.
So, Mayor, with this, then we'll wait for a little further discussion, and anybody that falls into that category, just ask them to hold on until we come to a conclusion.
Yeah, so I would encourage folks to take a look at their bill, just as we've been doing, asking them to reach out to us. We currently are holding a couple of significant charges until we had a standard process in place. We did want to get this in front of you so that the public was aware that we are looking at it and we recognize the impact it's having. Additionally, I would remind folks to look at your bill. When you receive your bill, the charge is delayed. So if you see something that's going to be an issue, please call us so we can make sure to kind of stop payment or adjust the payment amount that would go through on that date. Because we obviously don't want to have folks having significant issues. But I also thought it was really important for us to have an idea of the data itself, because I know it can seem like every single person is having the issue. That's not exactly what we're seeing, though we are definitely seeing changes in that catch up.
Mr. Russell.
To the mayor or Rob or Jason, for those folks who are on automatic payment, are we proactively, number one, we're not doing an automatic payment of a large sum, but are we also proactively contacting anybody who does have a large variance and making that contact so that they don't have that automatically drawn?
Mr. Stashak.
Yeah, there are cases where that is happening, yes. However, we're working with utility billing department, and we're doing, a lot of them are being caught ahead of time, so they're getting a process in place. Ginger Sampson, Deputy Auditor Sampson, has done a wonderful job, and myself this week, since she's out on vacation, and making sure we get the ACHs reversed prior to them hitting those accounts. So it's a multifaceted, multi-person effort to protect some of these folks from what's going on, and I know there's a lot of proactive conversation.
Mr. Hellman.
Yeah, I too have had several phone calls on the water situation, one of which was well over $800 difference. Is it okay to share this memorandum with them? I know they've had conversations with the water department to a certain extent, and I'm not 100% certain I think they were satisfied with the answer that they got. Leave it that way. But I think this would help as well. So I take it it's okay?
Yes. So, yes, obviously this is all public information. Please feel free to reference it, share it with others. Again, we'll also be putting, I think the information that explains how the bill is calculated is already on our water transmitter page. If not, that'll be on there first thing tomorrow, that kind of walks through that, as well as, yes, feel free to share. And again, everybody's bill is a little bit differently. We have to do a little bit of investigating with folks in some scenarios, so please encourage them to reach out to the utility billing department. Additionally, there were some people, obviously, that their bill, they already got notification, et cetera, and that's why we want to have that standard process so that we can also comb the data. And if somebody did pay, but this would have applied for them, we want to make sure that we go back and communicate with them to make sure it is fair.
Thank you.
Quick question for Mr. Russell. At the last meeting, you mentioned that you can identify whether you've had your meter replaced by looking at your bill. Can you or somebody
Yep. So in the documents, as well as in all of our communication, right underneath kind of your statement area above like your billing address, it will say book, and then it has a number. If that number then also has a letter at the end of it, that means you have a new transmitter. Now, practically, gosh, today they actually might all be in the ground at this point, and we're just getting them all connected to the system. So again, huge shout. I know I shared at the last meeting that our team has been working gangbusters to get these all installed. So I'm excited that I think at this point in time they have pretty much all of them installed, and now it's just getting them programmed and connected so that we can get the continuous reads and get our system back up and running into what people expect moving forward.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Letter to be filed. Committee report.
I don't know if I need to mention, as already referenced, the mayor's add-on letter for water bills.
Okay. Questions to that? Obviously, we just approached that. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, letter to be filed. Now, committee reports.
The Planning and Zoning Committee, to whom was referred a request to review changes to the zoning code. The City Planning Commission recommended some changes to the zoning code. Hancock Regional Planning Commission will provide red line copies. The Planning and Zoning Committee will consider this in August.
Mr. Russell.
Move that the committee report be accepted.
Second, Mr. Ballman. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the committee report say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. It is accepted.
The Planning and Zoning Committee, to whom was referred a request from Damon Kelly to rezone 609 West Folk Avenue from R3 small lot residential to C1 local commercial. This was tabled during the June 15th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. Councilman Russell moved to lift this from being tabled, seconded by Councilman Hellman. 4 in favor, 0 against. Councilman Hellman moved to deny the request, seconded by Councilman Ballman. 4 in favor, 1 against.
Mr. Russell.
Yeah, that should be 4 in favor, 0 against.
That's what I thought.
So sorry. And then I would also move that the committee report be accepted.
Second, Mr. Wobser. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the committee report say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. It is accepted.
The Appropriations Committee, to whom was referred a request to discuss a downtown recreation area agreement. We recommend that the mayor move forward with the execution of the contract with the following provisions. Adjust the contract format to the standard short form format agreement. Obtain, explore, and access agreement form from all property owners, and follow up with legal opinion on environmental related clauses in contract.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve the committee report.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion? Ms. Frischie.
This committee report, I was at that committee meeting. I guess I feel like the part 1 of moving forward, but yet you have 3 major things going on. I'm not sure how we could recommend to move forward with the legislation that we have when you're still looking for obtaining and exploring property owners, and then looking at legal opinions. There was several issues on that. So to me, it kind of contradicts moving forward. I don't think it sounds like it's ready to.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of the committee report say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay.
Nay.
The committee report is adopted. Legislation.
First reading.
Sorry, resolutions.
First reading for Resolution 16, 2023. A resolution transferring funds within appropriated funds and declaring an emergency.
Okay, next.
First reading for Resolution 17, 2023. A resolution recognizing the support of the City of Findlay, Ohio, of proceeding with filing an appeal of the denial of the County Road 212, County Road 236 annexation to the Court of Common Pleas, Hancock County, Ohio.
Mr. Palmer.
Move for adoption of resolution number 17-2023.
Second, Mr. Russell. Discussion. Mr. Russell.
I must say that I am very disappointed that we have to go this route. I thought we had good communication on this effort and the reasons that we needed to proceed with this work and the benefit it had to the entire community, including the county, and that us taking this project on was of benefit to the county. And I'm just very disappointed that we have to go to this level and take it to another step, another legal step, in order to do what in my view, and I believe the view of the council, is in the best interest of the community.
Other questions? Ms. Frischie?
I think the whole thing is disappointing as well. But I kind of lean towards the side that we should put a light in at that intersection. But then I question, how do we move forward with this resolution if the mayor and the auditor are having questions about entering into contract or something earlier? I didn't catch it all. So entering into contract because we have to give permission to annex, is that what was discussed? So how can we move forward?
My question was, does the mayor, it's one thing to have permission and to go to court and not need council's authorization to follow up on this. It's another thing to expand the boundaries of the city of Findlay with regard to its actual square footage, acquired land. That's what this is. This is land acquisition. That's annexation. I don't have anything on my desk that says we could move forward with this from a legal standpoint with regard to Ohio statutes as a statutory city, but again, I'm your auditor, not your law director.
Ms. Mayor?
So, Auditor, I think I understand your question a little bit better. Are you talking about the standard Ohio Revised Code process for annexation and the legislation that council would have to pass to accept and state that they would be willing to provide services, that standard step?
Mr. Stashek?
No, I'm asking specifically, this is an effort to annex by the administration. Does the administration have the authority to expand the boundaries of the city through an annexation process without council's specific approval to do so? That's my question. We can't acquire land, we can't buy land. We've talked about the Park District, that there should have been council approval to get Civitan Park. There really needs to be clarification here from my perspective.
Ms. Frischie?
So Don, the question's to you. This resolution and the annexation, can we do a resolution if we are not doing the annexation yet? Because that's not till September.
Mr. Rasmussen?
Well, you still need to do the annexation agreement. You'd still have to have that.
But since we don't have that yet, can we move forward with this resolution is all I need to know.
Ms. Mayor?
So this resolution is simply stating the council is in support of moving forward with the appeal process. Therefore, now, we could go as far as to say by passing this resolution, you're also showing support for the annexation, and therefore you would have the appropriate documentation. I would have to work through that with the auditor itself. But this evening, I would need the resolution passed so that we continue to move forward with the appeal process, and I can work through any documentation that the auditor may need from council. This is the first, again, that I'm hearing of his need on this. So when I met with him, and he even, anyways. So I think tonight I need the resolution to pass because we have to file the appeal motion within 30 days of the date it was denied. So we won't have another city council meeting before that occurs. Technically, per Ohio Revised Code and the law director's office's advisement, I don't even need council authority to be able to file the appeal. But I think, as Councilman Russell stated, I think it's a good sign to say that council supports this effort and believes that this project that we've been working on behalf of the county for 7 years is worth continuing to chug along with, and is going to provide a benefit to the county as a whole.
Hearing no more questions or comments, all those in favor of the resolution say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Ms. Frischie?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer? Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser?
Aye. The resolution is adopted. Ordinances.
Third reading for ordinance 2023-62. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into contracts with the Garland Company Incorporated for repairs needed at the city of Findlay's, Ohio's water billing office, and also the city of Findlay's, Ohio water distribution office, both located at 136 North Blanchard Street, project number 357-32500, appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Greeno.
Move for adoption of ordinance number 2023-062.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2023-63, an ordinance amending Chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code, by rezoning the following described property referred to as 219 Hurd Avenue rezone, which previously was zoned I-1 light industrial to R3 small lot residential. Second reading for ordinance 2023-64, an ordinance amending Chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code, by rezoning the following described property referred to as 0 West McPherson Avenue, parcel number 60000302210, rezone, which previously was zoned O1 offices and institutions to M2 multifamily high density. Second reading for ordinance 2023-65, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to advertise for bids and enter into contracts for the construction of various projects listed below, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2023-66, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into a contract with Toledo Elevator and Machine Company for the replacement of the municipal building elevator, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Rob, hate to put you on the spot with your city engineer not here, but Jeremy seemed to indicate that he wanted this done tonight. And I know that this was the a project that we had 0 bidders for, and so he's working directly with, I think, Toledo Elevator.
Correct.
Was there a specific reason that you are aware of that necessitated this to be done today?
Timing of materials, just getting things through the supply chain and getting them in here to design and then know what we need and then get it ordered. So it's a timing issue if we can move it.
Mr. Russell.
Move the council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2023-066 be given its third reading.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion? Ms. Mayor.
This is kind of a silly comment, but sorry, no discussion on a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. It's motion to suspend. My bad. There's been a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council. All those in favor of suspension say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer? Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Nay.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give the ordinance its third reading.
Ordinance 2023-66.
Mr. Hellman.
I'd move for approval of ordinance 2023-066.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Ms. Mayor.
As someone who doesn't want to be stuck in the elevator, I really appreciate you guys moving this forward.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Hellman.
If I may, to underscore what Mr. Martin has said about elevators, and it was brought up by Councilman Russell, I've been involved with a project that deals with a new elevator, and it is a problem. Just getting it done, getting a contractor to do the work, getting the pieces ordered and getting them delivered, and then to zero in on a fixed price. So I think anything we can do to move this forward would be a benefit to the employees that use that elevator, as well as our own citizens.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
And Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2023-68, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or service safety director of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to advertise for bids and enter into contracts with option years for the purchase of the materials, chemicals, and service agreements needed by the various departments of the city of Findlay, Ohio, commencing January 1st, 2024, and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2023-70, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to waive formal advertising and bidding and enter into contracts for the storm sewer repairs for the South Main Street, McPherson Avenue, project number 355-32800, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Ballman.
Rob, given, what's the timeline on this? I think we had prior conversation with Jeremy, and this is something he needed to get done right away, correct?
Correct. So just a quick update on this project. As he pointed out last council meeting with the first reading, he was going to reach out and get 3 estimates. He did only, in fact, get 1 back. And then he reached out. Those were local contractors. He reached out more regionally. He did not get any other people that actually were willing to even respond to him or give an estimate. We did, in fact, get Hohenbrink Excavating to they were one of the initial estimates, and they gave us a design estimate, or bid, I'm sorry, less than the design estimate that the city engineer actually initially had. So we would like to move this forward based on timing, knowing it has to be resolved. It's technically dry season. It's a heavy traffic area with schools not being in session right now. It's a nice opportunity to take advantage of this sooner than later. And they can start when they're ready to start if we're ready to appropriate the funds.
Mr. Ballman.
Given the reasons that the service safety director just outlined, I would move ordinance number 2023-070 be given its 3rd reading.
Second, Mr. Slough. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer. Aye. Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
And Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give the ordinance its 3rd reading.
Ordinance 2023-70.
Mr. Greeno.
Move for adoption of ordinance number 2023-070.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
And Mr. Niemeyer.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2023-71, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into a contract with Strand and Associates Incorporated to provide design and engineering services of the downtown recreation area Phase 2 benching of the Blanchard River, project number 319-13700, appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Okay, next.
First reading for ordinance 2023-72, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or service safety director of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into a memorandum of understanding granting the city of Findlay permission to store various city equipment in the Findlay City School District Board of Education's vacant building located at 0 Blanchard Avenue, parcel number 6100001017675, as set forth in the memorandum of understanding attached hereto as Exhibit A, and declaring an emergency.
Old business. Old business, Mr. Stashak.
Hey, real quick, not everybody likes history lessons, but your 2023-071 with regard to the downtown recreation area Phase 2, it's very similar with this having the emergency clause on it. You might want to discuss amongst yourselves as to whether or not that's a prudent use of the emergency clause. The reason I say that is if you put that in there, you're saying to the public, we're doing this, we're moving as quick as we can, and you have no say in it. It could be interpreted that way anyways. I'll paraphrase. The reason I bring it up is Brandman, we did the same thing. The city made that effort 15 years ago, and the community responded. not by a referendum on the piece of legislation, but by an initiative that completely tied the city's hands as to what they could do with the property. And the initiative that passed said that property could not be developed. It was a big, big deal. So I just share that information as a history lesson for you here, where if you don't have this emergency clause, at least you're making the fascia effort as to let the community know you're open for comments, you're open for consideration, you want them to come in. They feel they got a problem with it. If you do pass it, they have an opportunity to deal with that. Food for thought.
Other old business. Ms. Frishy.
Rob, I know Jeremy's not here. A couple months back, Jeremy mentioned, it came up about the bike path on Blanchard Street and that we were going to do a study on that. Has that been done yet, and do we have any numbers?
Okay. Yes, sir. My understanding is that information's being collected, but I have not seen the data or results of that study yet. But when we get it, we will share it.
Ms. Mayor.
Yeah, it was delayed because we want to be with school in session with the traffic counts. And so we had previously wanted to do it, within like a year time frame, but then COVID, so school wasn't in session then. So it has been delayed, but it is on the books to be done, I believe, in August or September.
Other old business. New business. Mr. Hellman.
If I may, and I've got a question, it's primarily for the mayor, I think, or maybe Mr. Martin, and it has to do with the eclipse coming up in 2024. And the state, as I understand it, has appropriated some additional funds for communities for security reasons. Are you aware of that? And is that something that, I know you're working on that number of people that are going to probably end up here for a night or two. Are you aware of that, and can we utilize those funds?
Ms. Mayor, will you shed some light on that subject?
Good one, good one.
Oh,
Don't leave you in the dark.
Right?
Yeah. I got it. So we are aware that the state is providing a number of resources. Rob and Jacqueline Holman have both been leading the effort, working with different community organizations. Findlay Solar 2024, I think, is our website that is being compiled. So we will look at any resources that the state makes available and how we may be able to put those to good use here locally.
Thank you.
Mr. Wobser, new business.
I'm calling a strategic planning committee meeting for August 1st at 5:00 p.m. and we'll do that up in the mayor's conference room on the third floor.
Mr. Greeno.
We'd like to have a water and sewer meeting to discuss the water billing adjustments. July 25th was a date that we could make it. I know that Rob's, I think you're going on vacation. So would that date still work, or do we need to set it later?
What was the date?
The 25th.
I am available that date, as well as Mr. Kolb should be available, and Jason can make that work.
I can send my deputy if you like.
That would be fine. Send Ginger. Okay, so let's just plan on the 25th, 4 o'clock.
Actually, that does not work for her. The next day would.
26th. You okay on 26th? Just 1 second.
Please hold.
We just would need to do it earlier if we do it that date, as we have the Wags and Walks event at 5:30.
3 o'clock.
Which I think would work well for Ginger as well, because
think
typically
he's
she tries to
working on
get
3 o'clock is
get
early.
home sooner
3
rather than
o'clock is
later.
as early as we can make it.
4 would work.
3.
Earliest?
Would Ginger make 3? Mayor, 3?
Does that work for you?
3 o'clock on the 26th.
26, right?
Wednesday, the 26th at 3 o'clock.
Thank you. Same subject, Mr. Station?
Same subject, third floor conference room, please.
Other new business, Mr. Station.
He's not going to toot his own horn, but I want to give kudos to Councilman Wobser for successfully herding cats since before 2017, and it looks like we're actually going to end up with a strategic plan coming to this body, and I think you deserve kudos for that. I know there were challenges. I know I was part of your challenges, and then I enjoyed every moment of that. But you deserve congratulations for getting the group to where you did, and the public needs to know it.
Mr. Webster, would you like to toot your own horn?
No, I'm not tooting my own horn, but Jim, I appreciate that. So we'll have just for us, the council, we did approve the final draft, or we will approve it prior to the August 1st meeting. So all of council will be getting that draft to them the Friday prior. It'll go its full 3 readings, and we'll have plenty of time to discuss it. But I'll talk more about it then. But Jim, thank you for your comments. It was a process, and something I'm very proud of, and everybody that's been associated with it, from the mayor on down to the auditor and everybody on council and all the community members that were involved, and something they're very proud of too.
Mr. Russell?
I had the opportunity last week to get back on a baseball field as an umpire, and was up at the Cube. And I hadn't been umpiring for a while, and hadn't been really to the Cube, especially from that vantage point, for a long while. And I got to say, I was so very impressed with the shape of the Cube, the shape of the fields. Starting from when I was walking in, and there's no trash anywhere. The grass is green. It's cut. It's edged. It's very inviting. The fields are in outstanding shape. They're well prepared for a night of baseball, and to see all the folks watching games and all the kids playing, and it's wonderful. And I talked to Lisa Mansfield, the Parks and Recs supervisor, and gave her my congrats, and asked her, who's responsible. And she gave me 3 names: Mike Gallagher, Kristen Buck, and Joe Marshall. And you can tell, just being up there, that they take great pride in the facility. And I remember working with Findlay Youth Baseball before we had the Cube, and fields were all over the place, and we didn't have the energy of being up at the Cube and what that meant. And I think you can say that the Cube has been an outstanding investment for the community, not only for the kids in house ball that play there, and Young Miss softball, and the hosting of University of Findlay, but also for all the travel baseball and softball that happens up there according to Mike Gallagher, that's pretty much every weekend, and those folks have to stay someplace, and they stay in our motels and hotels, and eat at our restaurants, and generate a lot of revenue. So it's a heck of an investment, and I keep that in mind as we look at Emory Adams and rebuilding the Fort Findlay down there, and as we look at the downtown recreation area, that our parks infrastructure investments do pay off, and they pay off for years and years and decades after. But the major point is for Mike and Kristen and Joe, thank you for your efforts. I think people see it, and they definitely appreciate it, and it's a treasure for Findlay.
Mr. Webster?
Councilman Russell talking about the Cube reminded me, and I'm not sure if this has been mentioned or not, but if it has, it should be repeated. We're actually going to have our first pickleball tournament out at the pickleball courts that are out at Riverside. And for the folks that were involved in getting that court converted from tennis courts over to pickleball, one of the things that we asked the group that was asking for that to be done was that they host a pickleball tournament. Of course, about the time we got that done, COVID hit, and things kind of fell off. But they are having this tournament. It's August 5th at the Riverside Park. It's in conjunction with the Findlay Firefighters Local 381, which is awesome. But I congratulate all the folks that are involved with the Findlay City Pickleball Club. And if you've never been out there, it gets a lot of use. There are a lot of people involved with that sport that's ever growing. And along with that, I always ask the mayor, we need more pickleball courts, Mayor. I've got a place picked out. As soon as you're ready to go.
We've got lots of ideas, don't you worry.
Other new business? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Mr. Niemeyer. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Any opposed, nay. We are adjourned.